Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Wisdom of the Soul, presented by the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Howdy from the Southern California desert, where I'm happy to say the temperature is moderating now as we move into August. Some beautiful weather out here. July was a bit toasty. We saw 115 number of days, 119. It's about as hot as it gets. I've seen 122 in past years. So we pretty much just stay indoors, but it's nice now. It's like 101, 102, which if you've ever been to the desert, you know is really nice. It's dry and wonderful, so we can sit outside. I hope you're enjoying your weather wherever it is. There's been a lot of heat, and I think we should mention, we talked in the Salam yesterday a little bit about Maui. I think most of you know that Doreen and I lived there for 5 years. We lived up country in Makawao and Kula, and there were some fires in Kula, but of course Lahaina, which is over on the west side on the south shore, was just devastated. And I've just, heartsick about it. It's hard to explain beyond the death. I'm sure the death toll is going to skyrocket. It's still under 100, but there's 1,000 people missing. It could hit. I heard 3% of the area has been searched, so it could be 500, 600 or more. It's just probably the worst fire in the history of the United States. If you think of it as the United States, and that's the other thing, is the culture of Lahaina, thought of as a tourist center, but if you've ever been there, you know that it carried the culture of the old royal kingdom. It was the capital of the islands before the colonists came. It was a whaling port for a long time when the Portuguese came. And it's just hard to explain how quaint and unique Lahaina Town is. And the festivals they have a crazy Halloween festival every year. And yeah, it was about shops and art galleries and restaurants and getting a frozen yogurt and strolling down the boardwalk there, but it still carried that. There was a library there, the Baldwin House. It's a 150-year-old house, and that library was all the ancient Hawaiian documents and artifacts, crafts, and such. And I haven't heard anything about that in the news, and that's one of the biggest losses beyond the loss of life. So forgive me for dwelling on it, but it's a personal tragedy, and we still have friends, close friends, who live on the island, and they're all safe, fortunately, but emotionally eviscerated. Just tragic. The new normal, I'm afraid. Today, we're going to work through a somewhat difficult, well, I don't mean to say difficult. What's a better word? Complicated. It's really not difficult, but it is complicated. The idea of codependency and what are codependent relationships and why do they cause such suffering? So after our opening meditation, I'm going to wade into this concept, talk about dependence, dependent personality disorder, which is a thing, and then codependence or codependency, which most people think of as being part of the addiction community, where alcoholism or drug abuse is involved. And it can be and is an important part of that. But even if there are not the complications of drug or alcohol abuse, many people are trapped as a result of childhood trauma and maladaptive or dysfunctional relationships in a vicious cycle of codependency, depending emotionally on others and supplanting an awareness of their own emotions with the emotions of other people. Simply said, people pleasing, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think we're all aware of it when we need to be assertive, when it's time to say no to somebody who's asking a favor of you, and you feel that tug of war inside. Gosh, I'd like to be able to say yes, but some part of me feels like I'd be betraying myself if I did. And I want to please this person. I want to avoid displeasing them, especially given who they are in my life, maybe a family member, a parent, a child, a good friend, a work associate, a boss. Many people are in positions to manipulate us. And we set ourselves up for it by being this, go along to get along individual who says, yeah, I'll do it, only because it's hard to say no. Back in my radio days in the 1980s, I worked at KABC with a professor from, either UCLA or USC, I forget which now. His name was Manuel Smith. And he wrote a book at that time called Why Do I Feel Guilty When I Say No? And this is an example of the torment. Maybe that's overstated, but the difficulty that we go through when someone asks us to do something that we really don't want to do, but somehow feel obliged to do it. And then, because we don't want to displease them and suffer the consequences, we end up suffering anyway because of our own resentment and bitterness and allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of and then unappreciated and discounted. And so we're all codependent to some extent. And I think that's why it's a great topic. Also, I have about 555, I think almost 560 podcasts that I've been doing since 2008. And two of the most popular podcasts I've ever done have been on codependency. So I know people are looking for the information and benefiting from the information and, telling their friends about these podcasts. So that's our topic for the day today. Appreciate you being here. And let's do our opening meditation. If you get comfortable and close your eyes and settle in a little bit, take a few slow, deep breaths. And as you exhale, feel the letting go in your body. Pulling in strength and power as you inhale, fill your lungs, hold for just a beat as you peak, and then as you exhale, just as slowly through the nose or the mouth, feel the letting go feeling. Like a sigh of relief. It's a sigh of release. Muscles relaxing and unwinding. Feel the chair supporting you or the furniture upon which you sit, the cushion, the floor, whatever. As if to bring to mind the understanding that there's no need to cooperate, that you can become completely relaxed And the furniture will not drop you any more than the floor will fail. And you can completely let go, even more deeply. If you haven't already, breathe normally and notice that that is a letting go. You're no longer the breather. You are now the awareness of your body breathing itself. Meditation in this way is a practice that in time allows us to become aware that we need not be the thinker, but the awareness of our thinking. Particularly those task unrelated, intrusive thoughts, often filled with negativity and worry and doubt. But by becoming aware of these intrusive thoughts and their own particular agenda, seemingly, that we can study the mind and watch its patterns, and release the confusion that comes from believing that these thoughts are valid because they're your thoughts. But if they're not deliberate and they're not purposeful, if they're not task related, are they really your thoughts? Or is it just intrusive negativity bubbling up from the fevered swamp of unconsciousness where all manner of hobgoblins live? You can watch that without being it, don't you see? And you can be the awareness behind your emotions. Instead of being angry, for example, you can be aware of anger coming upon you. Catch it on the horizon while it's still small. Before it gets all over you, you can see it coming a mile away. As you become more and more aware, due to your practice of mindfulness meditation. Oh, look, this is beginning to anger me. If I don't find some more clear understanding of what this anger represents and the hurt behind it and the anxiety and fear at its roots, it's going to get all over me. And I'll say and do things I later regret. Just some of the benefits of becoming more aware in thought and feeling and even in our behavior. To choose behavior, to choose the best behavior, to consider the consequences of your behavior before you initiate it. How different that is from the reflexive knee-jerk reaction behind most of our behavior. So to learn to be more aware of the choices we have in the way we speak and behave, the way we feel and what we think, we practice watching the body breathe itself, you see? This is called Vipassana. So gently place your awareness, if you haven't already, in the bottom of your nose. And while I remain silent for just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, until you hear my voice again, simply observe without any judgment your body breathing itself. This is an in-breath, this is an out-breath. Around and around. Notice the period. Notice the pause at each end. Notice how the back and forth is really an around and around. Just don't judge it as good or bad or right or wrong, or maybe I could do it better, or let go of all of that. And simply be aware that if you let go, the body will breathe itself and you can watch. 2 minutes. This practice alone can be a meditation of 15 or 20 minutes. There are people that do this for years and years and years and never get bored. But it's also a wonderful opening to any other kind of meditation you may be doing. And there are many types of meditation and many reasons to meditate. Chief among them is simple relaxation and a reduction of stress and anxiety, fear and worry, doubt and apprehension, like a mental, emotional vacation. There are also meditations for practical problem solving and decision making. And some of my favorite meditations have to do with understanding emotional feelings. Because when we think about our feelings, we only go so far. I bet you've noticed how quickly you get to a point where it feels like you're spinning your wheels and thinking and thinking and thinking about why we feel the way we feel and what these feelings mean. Really doesn't take us anywhere. It doesn't really help. Perhaps the first benefit of using the expanded awareness of meditation and deep relaxation to look at our emotional feelings is to realize how often we project, as if feelings are a stimulus that's been done to us by others. I dare say most people live, grow old, and pass away, and it never occurs to them that their emotional feelings are their emotional feelings, not something done to them. Most of us feel as if we are victims or targets of feelings done to us, especially the negative ones. And thinking about feelings and thinking and thinking and thinking tends to promote that idea that so-and-so made me angry. These people made me envious. They're the reason I feel lonely, alienated, and misunderstood. They are the cause of my suffering. And of course, we have no control over them, this illusion of the other. And so we suffer. Or maybe we yell at them and tell them to stop making me feel the way I feel. We need to change the world. We need to change them. Which just leads to more frustration. It's a wonderful old saying in Eastern philosophy. It goes back to a great avatar named Shantideva in 500 AD, who wrote something along the lines of, to avoid injuring our feet on sticks and stones, we could cover the world with leather. It's just so much easier to wear sandals. So we want to change the world so that our lives improve. Perhaps we're doing it backwards. Maybe if we change ourselves, not only do we improve, but we improve the world. Maybe the world will change faster than you realize. For all the problems in the world, to what degree do we compound it and exacerbate it with our attitudes and our funky belief systems about having no responsibility whatsoever, just being a victim? or a target or an effect of a life done to us. The alternative to thinking about a feeling, which becomes available big time in deep relaxation, is intuition. Trusting your first impression. Consider that phrase. Trusting my first impression. It's not a matter of logic, is it? There's no reasoning or analysis. And what's being impressed upon you? What is that impress? Well, it's a feeling at first. But again, the magic of deep and profound relaxation and the expanded awareness that results is that first impression is a dawning that as we sit with it leads to insight and realization, like the dawning of a new idea. Like the actual dawning in the morning as the earth rotates toward the sun, tempted to say as the sun rises. And what was dark and unseen, you begin to see as the light grows. In the same way, first impression, developing your intuition with an intention in states of deep relaxation, is a coming of the dawn. It's enlightening. It's light. Oh, I see. Comes like that. Very gently in cat's feet. Oh, I see why I feel that way. And you realize that your emotions are not done to you. They are your personal response to situations. Oh my. And this ability we call response ability. Don't you see? These are my feelings. They tell me virtually nothing about the stimulus, the world event or the situation, the condition, that individual or group of people, the long bony finger that is being jabbed into my sternum tells me nothing about the outer world. That's what thoughts are for. My feelings are subjective. They reveal me to me. As I relax and trust my intuition, this first impression dawns upon us and then expands. We begin to understand our emotions, taking responsibility for the way we feel. And we discover ourselves. This is self-discovery. It's the beginning of self-improvement. Is to realize the self that we seek to improve. A self that is like others in some significant ways, but ultimately is unique. You have fingerprint evidence and DNA proof that there never has been another you, is not now. And there's no reason to believe there ever will be anyone. who feels quite like you do. So then we reconcile our individuality and our uniqueness with an understanding that we're part of one thing, a universe. And while it may seem somewhat paradoxical that I could be part of one whole thing to the exclusion of no thing, and at the same time unique, one of a kind. Consider a jigsaw puzzle. Every piece is a unique shape, carries unique information on its surface, and yet is part of a whole. And if any piece is missing, you throw the puzzle away. The whole needs the part. Every piece. Who wants a jigsaw puzzle with even one piece missing? So while each of us is both a fragment of the whole and a unique individual, reconcile that by understanding that you are essential to the whole. And to discover that uniqueness and that individuality, it's not a matter of thinking the way other people think. It's a matter of understanding, discovering yourself through your emotional feelings. Let go of the obsession on, they made me feel this way. I feel this way because of this condition or event. And do a 180. What does this feeling reveal about me? It's wondrous, wonderful, and essential. You're not what others think of you. I suppose we're all aware of that. But you're also not what you think of yourself. You're what you care about. You are what you love. You are that you care and that you love. You are a loving, caring being. Stand in that vulnerability for a moment. Open and receptive to your vulnerability as a loving, caring being. Find yourself there. I am what I love. I am what I care about. I am that I am loving and caring. That's the essence. You are love. You are the love you've been looking for all of your life. All love flows through you and out into the world. And sometimes it reflects off others in a way that you find quite remarkable, and you say, I love this person. I love you. But that's your love. And it's all divine. In fact, it's the only thing that's real. Don't believe that because I said it. Just consider it. What if Love is the only thing that's real. Good, true, and beautiful. Far more than an emotion or an affinity or affection or warmth or safety, but awareness itself. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to hold on to love. You don't have to pick it up. You don't have to carry it because it's everywhere equally present. It's like fish to water. Fish know nothing of water because it's everywhere. Fish know nothing of water because it's everywhere. And so too love. You need not hold on to it. You couldn't if you tried. Holding on is fear. Holding on to love is a fear of losing love. But if it's everywhere, it can't be lost, don't you see? And it's not out there, it's in here. It's life, it's the dawning itself. It's every breath, it's your being. Love is consciousness. Bring this understanding with you gently, effortlessly, as you reorient yourself toward the waking state, forming the intention to come back to wide awake. Feel a gentle drifting up, floating up toward the wide awake state, bringing with you a full memory and a profound understanding. Tell yourself this will all be so easy to remember. And then, now, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room, eyes open now, back in the room, feeling fine, refreshed, and rested, feeling better than before. Wide awake, back in the room, better than before. Good. I like that. I love these meditations we do. I want to remind you, at the risk of being too repetitive, that group meditation has benefits that meditating alone may not have unless you invoke a group. And again, I know I've said this before, but we always have new people, so I think it bears repeating. I don't hear it very often in the self-help community or among meditators or yoga classes or whatever. The idea of invoking a group every time you meditate, even if you appear to be physically alone, consider as you enter meditation deep that there are millions of other people on this planet. Let's just confine ourselves to, let's forget about the whole universe and the billions of other planets that are likely populated by sentient beings. Let's just stick with what we know. On this Earth planet, at any minute of any hour of any day, there are millions of people in meditation and prayer. These are special brainwave levels. And you can enter that group. Further, if you're metaphysically oriented or esoterically oriented and embrace the idea of an oversoul, that the soul is not simply something that dwells within, but that overshadows, and that we are a emanation or projection of a soul on high, above, and free of form. Those souls are perpetually in meditation deep. And when you invoke that group energy, it'll improve the quality of your meditation. A little tip that I feel strongly about sharing with you. So let's talk about codependency, huh? I said this is a little complicated. And in the last couple of days, I've given a lot of thought to how to best explain it. I think I should start with the more common understanding that we get from books like Codependent No More by Melanie Beattie, a very important, groundbreaking book from, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Codependent No More, Melanie. Is it Melanie or Melody? I think it's Melanie Beattie. And she talks in this book about her own recovery as a codependent. And in AA and similar groups like Al-Anon and even Codependents Anonymous, there's an understanding of the enabling that a non-alcoholic who's in a relationship with an alcoholic or substance abuser can unconsciously play. And so I think that's a place to begin, because it's probably the most common application of the term codependency or codependence is enabling. By being a nice, kind, loving, go along to get along person in a relationship with a substance abuser, we often, without realizing, enable their behavior. In other words, we protect them from the harsh and negative consequences of being an abuser, being a drunk or a junkie. Yet what else are we to do? Let's say that your partner has a habit as an alcoholic or abuser. Let's say alcoholic because of the hangover. Saturday night, Sunday morning, you know that your partner's sleeping in because they're sick, they're hungover, they went on a binge the night before. You can see the empty bottles. you know they were drunk. You heard them, you saw them. And in the morning, if you've ever had a hangover, you know what it's like. It's horrible. Your hair hurts. And so as enablers, we tiptoe around the house. We don't wake them up. We, generally speaking, do everything that we can to try to prevent getting screamed at or yelled at, because an abuser is typically irresponsible, like most of us, playing victim to their feeling, in this case to physical feeling as well as emotional feeling. And if you wake up this hungover partner of yours, they're going to start screaming at you for waking them up, for making noise. Turn down that damn TV, that radio. You know I drank the night before, but they're not responsible. You know, it's not, they don't have anything to do with the fact that that, that they drank a 12-pack of beer and a bottle of wine and a pint of whiskey on top of that. It's not their fault, right? Um, no problem. What's that T-shirt? I drink, I fall down, I get up, no problem. Um, so it's not. I don't have anything to do with the fact that I feel miserable after a binge. It's your fault. And as I explain it here, it may sound absurd, but if you've ever lived in that situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we do our best to avoid these kinds of situations. And unconsciously, in most cases, I say unconsciously, enable the alcoholic to be an even more drunk alcoholic or a substance abuser, because we're inadvertently protecting them from the negative consequences of their behavior. So codependence or codependency in this case generally refers to the enabler. Now, I can see how the alcoholic or the drug abuser would also be a codependent. They're dependent on the substance, but there's also some codependence in that relationship. They depend on the enabler to protect them from the consequences of their behavior. Nevertheless, clinically, and in most of these CODA groups and Al-Anon and AA, the codependent is the individual who is sober, clean and sober, but enabling through their behavior the drunk, the alcoholic, to continue that behavior. And what are you going to do? Leave? That's not an option for people, families, kids, maybe financial reasons. It's just not always that easy to pack up and leave. So when we talk about codependence or codependency or enabling, I think that's where we begin clinically, talking about the individual who enables the substance abuser as codependent. There are, however, many, many codependent relationships that have nothing to do with alcohol or drug abuse, where codependence refers to the maladaptive, dysfunctional relationships of two people. Could be two or more people, but let's just talk about two people in relationship. Let's say a partnership, a loving relationship. In this case, I think a good way to define codependence is an emotional swap where each person is good, well-intended, and a bit of a people pleaser, probably because as a child you had to avoid abuse by not asserting yourself. I mean, what child is allowed, much less encouraged, to express their feelings? What child is permitted to express their anger without being punished? I mean, if you fall into this category, know that you're an exception, right? What were your parents like? Highly evolved or professional psychologists or psychiatrists that they knew the importance of allowing you to express yourself? All of that was stifled in my family and virtually everybody I know. As children, we're not allowed to have feelings, especially boy children. Girls a little more so. They're at least permitted to cry. Boys are not permitted to cry. What I heard was, shut up or I'll give you something to cry about. And I was not allowed to be afraid because that made me a girl. And the worst thing you can call a little boy is a girl, right? So I was not allowed to be afraid, and I was not allowed to be angry. And I was not allowed to be sad. And I was not allowed to express my emotions. So I had no understanding of my emotions. So I had little understanding of myself. All that's left are thoughts. And then as a kid, you stand in front of a mirror, you're 8 years old, you're 12 years old, you're 16 years old, and you're trying to invent a character. You want to be, in my case, I guess I was choosing between being James Dean or, I don't know, some cowboy hero or superhero or some badass motorcycle guy. I don't know. I just sort of went down the middle, I guess, and went with the flow and dressed like the other guys to be, whatever was in at the time. Remember how important it was to me to highly shined black shoes. That was a big deal in the 60s when I was in high school, and bone-colored Levi's. Boy, we had to have bone-colored Levi's. That's what everybody was wearing. It's silly. But then you forget about that and you grow up to be the adult that's an extension of this character that you cobbled together as a kid. And again, often live our entire lives without any exposure to who I really am based on how I feel, because I have no experience owning my feelings. There's something that's been done to me by others. Then we get in relationships with other people who've suffered in the same way. And this is where the codependency comes in when drugs and alcohol are not involved. It's an emotional swap. I ignore my own feelings and zone in or zoom in on the feelings of my partner and use their feelings as a gauge of how I'm doing. And they're doing the same thing. And we wonder why relationships don't work. Then we have a need for the others to be happy. And if they're not happy, even if we deny it at times, a part of us feels responsible for the fact that they're not happy. And many times it's quite obvious. The other in a relationship will say, well, you're the reason I'm, they'll say right out, you're the reason I'm not happy. Well, of course I'm not happy because you do this and you do that. And what do people argue about? What's the most common word at the beginning of a sentence in an argument? You always, you never, you're the one who, well, you started it. Well, remember that time that you from 20 years ago? And I'll never forget that. I'll never forgive you for what you. Where's the I? I feel and I felt and I'm feeling. Where is that? Too scary, too vulnerable. But no reference. We have no reference to I feel. You see? So we're using other people's feelings to try to understand ourselves. And those people are using their best understanding of our feelings to understand them. It's like wearing each other's shoes. It just doesn't fit. They don't fit. It doesn't feel right. And we don't know what to do. So codependency clearly goes beyond the substance abuse community to this exaggerated form of people pleasing. Now, how do we get that back? How do we recover and become emotionally independent? Well, it starts by, I think it starts, I guess it's debatable where you begin, but to me it starts with being assertive. Learning to stand up for yourself even if you're not sure who that self is. There's got to be a self in here someplace. I realize that 25, 45, 65, I really don't have much idea who that is, but there's got to be some self in here. And I'm tired of getting steamrollered. And I'm tired of betraying myself. and taking on obligations and doing favors and following orders and living up to other people's expectations as if that's going to make me feel good about myself. If I could please them, if I say, yeah, I'll handle that for you. Yeah, I'll do that for you. Even though you don't want to, you're dreading it. You were terrified they were going to ask you, and then they did. And you even may have made a secret promise to yourself. I'm going to say no this time, but it happens and you can't say it. And so you take on that. Yeah, I'll do that for you. Yeah, whatever it happens to be. And then we get bitter and resentful and start self-loathing in this self-deprecating internal dialogue, this self-talk about, boy, I'm so ashamed of myself. Why did I do that? Why can't I stand up for myself? Maybe it's you don't know who the self is that you're standing up for. And you want to be liked. You want to be a nice person. You want to be appreciated by other people. And we're afraid that we'll be discounted and demeaned and disowned if we displease other people. But there are diplomatic ways of doing it. You can assert yourself in an appropriate way, like, hey, Bill, Sally, you know, I wish I could help you with that. I think that might be a fun challenge for me. But to tell you the truth, I have no time for that right now. I just cannot make that a priority in my life. There's just too much going on, too much on my plate, and leave it at that. Don't worry about explaining it further. And if they come back at you, because they probably will, just repeat yourself gently. Oh, I know. Boy, I would if I could. I just love to help you with that. Can't do it, though. I'm sure you'll understand. That's a leadership trick. I know you'll understand. Right? And maybe they will and maybe they won't. But I think most of us have been assertive enough that we've found that there are extraordinary benefits when you do have the wherewithal to stand up for yourself and assert yourself. Yes, I would like to please you. I know it would make you happy. And making you happy would make me happy, but only to a limited, you don't say this, but in your own mind, you're thinking this. And making this person happy would make me happy, but only to a limited degree, because I would also suffer the resentment and the internal shame of knowing that I had betrayed myself, that I acted in a way that was contrary to my own self-interest, because I'm allowing myself to be pressured by this other person who I'd like to please, or at least wish to avoid displeasing. You understand? It's this emotional swap. But the only way out of this is to own your feelings and know that that's how you discover the self that you stand up for. And honor those feelings and trust those feelings. Right? Self-love, self-trust, self-respect is every bit as important as loving, trusting, and respecting other people. It just, in many cases, seems more difficult. Because you can grant them the benefit of the doubt. Well, yeah, I love them and trust them and respect them, even though they're not always deserving of my love and trust and respect. Nevertheless, I give them the benefit of the doubt. But I know myself well enough, or I don't know myself well enough. I'm confused about who I am. I don't know if I trust myself. Is it easier to trust others than to trust yourself? I don't know if I respect myself because I don't know myself. Do I know other people better than I know myself? Or do I think I know other people better than myself? Why would we try to please other people as an indirect way to please yourself when it seems so much more reasonable to treat yourself with love, trust, and respect so that then you have more to give to others? Why cover the world with leather? Just wear sandals. Why change the world so that you benefit when you could change yourself to benefit the world? So I think codependency is just living your life backwards. I think that's the simplest way I can say it. And again, we're all codependent to some extent because we want to please people. We want people to be happy. We want to all have fun and just get along. Rodney King, can't we just all get along here, right? But don't betray yourself as a way of doing it. This is where self-discovery begins. Not what you think of yourself, but how you feel. Own those feelings. Well, it's 5 after. Let's go to the Q&A. If you have a comment or a question, and I hope you do, we'll carry on at least till 12:30 with your questions and comments. You can either just use that reaction control in the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, or shoot a chat message to Melinda, who is our co-host today, and she'll call on you. Just say, I have a question or a comment, or you can boil it down, synthesize it to a single sentence or two. That'll help you. And then we'll give you a chance to unmute and we'll have a little back and forth. All right. Codependency. What do you think about it? How do you feel about it? And what are your comments? What are your questions? Melinda?
I'm going to pass to Hannah. She's got something to put out there.
Okay. Hannah.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much. That was great. And at first I thought I was going to say something that I no longer feel the need to say. I'm really glad that you pointed out that codependence can happen in situations unrelated to the only abusers are definitely not alcoholics and addicts. And just one little comment about something at the beginning. I like that analogy that just because more and more people get on the beach doesn't mean there's any less sunshine for everybody, you know? And I was wondering two things. One is, and I'm just going to say them both. One is, do you think that you were talking about children not being allowed to express their feelings and things like that? And I think sometimes today there's almost an overindulgence of availability to do that, kind of to the extent where we create a reality in their minds that doesn't really exist, you know, that the world is going to get covered with leather to help them out through life's occurrences. And the other thing is, I was wondering if you'd comment on, you know, so let's say we do something that we do agree to do something that we had said that we wouldn't. And I think that something else that comes along with that is disappointment in the expectation that we had of how that person is going to respond to us having done that for them, you know, and kind of coupled with that also, sometimes offering to do something we didn't want to do because we think we're going to be helpful, and then having those expectations and then being doubly disappointed and hurt and whatnot. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Both good points. First of all, the participation trophy. I I suspect, from what I've heard in the last 20 years or so, that what you say is true. That uh, parents of my generation, in particular, the counterculture, went too far the other way and overindulged their children. Drove them to school every day, even if it was 2 blocks away and they could have walked. Gave them everything they wanted, spoiled them. Um, so if that's the case, then the pendulum will swing, I think, and eventually find its center. So if we come from thousands of years of repression into a few decades of being too permissive, then I'm sure we'll figure it out in time and find that classic middle way. But it's a good point. It's a delicate balance to empower your children in that way by listening to them and honoring their feelings without giving them so much power that they lose all respect for their parents and talk to their parents in horrible ways.
And entitlement comes to mind.
Yeah. And then the parents who tolerate that, thinking, well, I'd rather have an assertive child than, like my daughter, if some guy's moving fast on her, she'll be assertive enough to fend him off and not feel that she's got to be codependent in this situation. So it's a delicate balance. And what was the second point you made?
The disappointment that can come with doing something that might not be in our best interest, and then being disappointed that we don't get the response from the person that we did something for,
Yeah.
our expectations of that.
That brings up that's so good. It brings up this whole field of doing it for the wrong reasons. If, Christ makes reference in the New Testament in a couple of places to, if you're going to pray, don't do it in public and make a big scene out of what a holy person you are. And if you're going to give alms and charity, do it privately and secretly. Otherwise, your attempts to attract attention belie the true reason that you're being generous, and destroys, all the good karma that would come from that. So if our reason for helping another person, for allowing ourselves to be a little too dependent upon pleasing them, is self-gratification, if we did it because we wanted to be appreciated, then maybe we're doing it for the wrong reason. Real giving, true giving, it's a high bar, but true giving is about not expecting anything in return, not even to be appreciated, not even the slightest gratitude. And to the extent to which we can give anonymously or give secretively, I think that's even better than, if when possible, than making yourself known or doing it because, at least in part, because you have some expectation of being appreciated, and that'll build the relationship and then they'll love me. So the more aware, the more conscious we are, the less likely we are, I think, to fall into that trap.
Or also, though, the expectation that if you do this, they're going to behave differently.
Yeah.
Towards you or in general.
Yeah, they'll love you more. They'll accept you more. That's the real issue, is we're not accepting ourselves. This is codependency. It's exactly on point. our need for others to accept us is in direct proportion to our inability or unwillingness to accept ourselves, because we don't know who that self is. And the more self-acceptance that we have, the less it matters. The more you know who you are, the less it matters what other people think. It just becomes, you get a quality of self-confidence, self-love, self-trust, self-respect that diminishes a need for other people to reinforce that. And a fear I had when I came to this stage in my own personal development was, and yet I don't want to become egotistical. I don't want to become pompous or arrogant, because then nobody would like me. But what I found is the more I understood the truth of who I am, the more humble I became. I didn't get arrogant or pompous at all. I think I have a healthy ego. I think everyone should have a healthy ego. But the ego's job is to ride shotgun. We don't let it drive the car. You know. Thank you for that. Anybody else, Mindy?
Let me see here. I don't see anybody right now. That was just Hannah's follow-up. I did want to point out, the way I work here, that the painting with the broad brush as far as pleasing other people gets a little tricky when it factors in our human nature as pack animals. And the other side of that spectrum is sociopathy, which it's a fine line. And I think it's real hard to tread. I think Hannah had a great point that sometimes doing something for someone and then either getting dissed or getting nothing in reply just inherently after a while doesn't feel right. And so I think our humanness pulls us in kind of a people-pleasing way if we're caring. So I think that's the rub too. It's like, how do I, especially a parent to his kids, or it's a hard line to draw between, maybe, it's almost like we have to see the future to really be able to draw that line sometimes. At least I find that.
See the future.
Well, almost know how things are going to work out. It just can be hard in the moment to read, is this a favor? Is this a good thing? Or should I say no? Sometimes it's just not that clear. And down the line, sometimes I can see what it has turned into, maybe doing too much for my son, or letting him do a behavior that I need to yank back on and say, it's not going to work. It's not working.
Well, it can be difficult. There's no question about it, because you have, these opposition of forces that need to be reconciled. Like, I don't want to go too far this way. I don't want to go too far that way. And sometimes instead of a win-win situation, it looks like a lose-lose situation. No matter what I do, I'm going to lose out. But that's what integrity is.
I guess just think about if you did something over and over again, you never got one acknowledgement. After a while, you get a little inured to it, and I think that might be a force to fight against, that maybe meditation can help with. But I know for me, like if I open the door for someone and they don't even look at me and they don't even smile or nod their head, I just get kind of irritated. But I'm working on it.
Yeah, I would go to compassion then, because what you're witnessing is a person who's oblivious, and they're suffering. Or if they're not oblivious and they've made a decision not to acknowledge your kindness, they're suffering even more. So you go to compassion for their suffering. But be glad you're not them, that you're conscious enough that if someone opened the door for you, you'd turn, look them in the eyes, smile, and say thank you. I was in a, oh, it doesn't matter where I was. I was out and about the other day, and it's the first time this has ever happened to me. And I was standing in a waiting room where every chair was full. And I stood there for, I checked in, and then I had to stand in this room of probably 30 or 40 people, half a dozen of whom were standing, and everybody else was in a chair. I didn't stand there more than 60 seconds, and this young boy came up to me, maybe 12 years old. And he said, "Excuse me, sir, would you like to sit in this chair?" And I was blown away. I'm 75 years old now, and nobody's ever spotted me as this old man needs a chair, right? But I thought the kindness, I just felt the kindness, and somebody taught him that, right? His parents taught him that. He didn't learn it from watching TV, I'll bet you. And I said, "No, thanks, man. I'm fine. I enjoy standing, actually, but I really appreciate that. Thank you." And he went back and sat down. But little things like that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Reinforce my optimism and my hope for humanity surviving these really dark and desperate times of self-centeredness and the way indecency is being celebrated in this country at the highest levels. You have a convicted rapist running for president who steals from a charity and bilks people out of money in a phony university, and still they think that's my guy, a rapist who steals money from charity and a con man, and not to mention trying to overthrow the government. That's my guy. He says what he thinks. It's just, these are dark times. These are really dark times, and it's really easy to lose your faith in humanity. And that young boy restored it to a significant degree for me just a few days ago. Okay, well, if there's nobody else, I'm going to back out of here and boogie on down the highway. One last look, Melinda. Anybody else?
No. Oh, wait, no. I thought Robert has something to say.
All right, Robert.
Yeah, Alan, excellent class today. And it's actually going to have me start looking at some things that I've overlooked and pushed to the side. But I just wanted to tell you, awesome class. I wanted to comment on Hannah with the sense of entitlement that the youth and the people have these days, that they truly think that they're entitled to this, and you have to pay your dues like we did when we were growing up, and have responsibility and things like that. And the one thing that really hit home is lately I've been, when I drive, I'm trying to focus more on giving. The same thing, like we come to the stoplight at the same time, let the guy ahead of me just go, that's fine. And you kind of wave and say, yeah, go ahead. And they don't even look at you or acknowledge you. Just take it for granted, And part of me says, that, guy, whatever, that's, pretty selfish and everything. And then the other part just says, you know what, let it go. Just let it go. It's not a big deal. You know what? People are like that, and you just have to be the best that you can, and just try and do that and have a whole different outlook on the road and all of that. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I always think of fear when in a situation like that. If you were to, at an intersection, wave somebody through and they ignore you, or as Melinda said, hold the door open for you and act like you're invisible. But they're afraid, they're terrified. And again, if you go to compassion, um, what a horrible thing to be afraid to wave, as if they let go of their steely nature, their whole house of cards would crumble. Their whole phony idea of who they are would collapse if they got real for a minute. If you say get real to all, well, sort of a confrontative thing to say, I suppose, but my point is a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about. If you say, could you just be real for a minute? Just drop the pretense and the BS and just tell me what you really think or how you really feel, or underneath all of that, what are you saying to yourself in your head that you never share? I think there's a lot of terror there. When people drive too fast on the freeway, most people think in terms of where are they going that's so important? Where are they trying to get to? And it's always occurred to me just the opposite. What are they afraid of? What are they trying to get away from? What are they trying to outrun? I see people fleeing in terror, not rushing towards someplace, but just terrified of living in their own skin. And by the way, that's what the apocalypse is. It's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of a whole new age of consciousness where people open themselves, as everyone in this group has begun to do by virtue of the fact that you're here, to the possibilities and potentialities of who we really are. And it's extraordinary. Melinda made reference to human beings in animal bodies. I forget exactly how you said it, but we are indeed, as humans, both spiritual beings in animal bodies. And the human is the middle, the both spirit with very exalted ethics and values based on love and consciousness and a recognition that otherness, separation is an illusion. There's just one of us here. Walk in the woods, hug a tree, you'll feel it, right? Best way to connect with the world is to get out of the city and into nature, and you'll feel it. You'll feel that connection. But it's the human being that has to reconcile our spiritual nature with the fact that we're in these animal bodies, terrified, running, always looking around, waiting for some predator to devour us. And consciousness is that middle element that reconciles spirit with the material world, and vice versa. We go back to where we were 75 classes ago when we started, the nature of the Trinity. Maybe we'll review that. The threeness of things, spirit, consciousness, and matter, or the Christian Trinity, or the Buddhist Trinity, or the Islamic Trinity, or the Jewish Trinity, the Trimurti. It just, threeness comes out again and again and again. Even between cause and effect is meaning, and between stimulus and response is perception. That's how you break up the illusion of duality, is with that middle element. You stand between the either or, and everything opens up. That's one way of talking about the middle way. So thank you, Robert. Thank you for that. One more time. Anybody else, Melinda?
No, it looks like that wraps it up, Michael.
Good. Well, we're just about at 12:30 anyway, so perfect. Thank you, folks. Thanks for being here. Remember, an edited version of this is podcast, is the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School on all players, and the video is posted to YouTube. And tell your friends about it. The newsletter is available. Just request it at michaelbenner.com, and then you'll get show notes and the link to each Sunday class. Have a wonderful week. Namaste, aloha, salam, and please unmute and say thank you to everybody before you go.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
everyone else.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo and aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Yes, you too.
Thanks so much, Michael. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, I've lost my cursor. Where is my cursor?